I'm McKenna Sellers, Executive Director for the Montana Renewable Energy Association, and today I'm pleased to bring you this legislative briefing at the halfway mark of the legislative session, the 68th Montana State Legislative Session. This briefing will be about 30 to 40 minutes long. We'll share some details and a status report on bills that MREA has been tracking. We'll answer questions from this group, provide a short list of bills that are still in play and of relevance to Montana Renewable Energy Association, distributed energy, and the future direction of clean energy power development in our state. If you're new to MREA, just to give you a quick refresher, if this is something new to you, MREA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to advance renewable energy in Montana through education, through advocacy, and through industry engagement. You can join or support MREA by visiting our website, which I will drop in the chat for you to peruse. There we go. And I see that we have about 20 people on the call today. We challenge each person on this call to either become a member if you're not already, or make a one-time donation to MREA of $50 so we can step into the second half of the legislative session with our best foot forward. Give that some thought, recognizing that we're a nonprofit organization and the work that we do is only possible through our members. But we will revisit that question, or that challenge, I should say, at the end of this presentation. Today, I'm co-presenting with this legislative briefing with Nicola Laverack. Nicola, would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicola Laverack. I'm the Communications Director at Onsite Energy. It's a Bozeman and Missoula-based solar installer. And I'm also on the board and on the policy committee at MREA. And my role on the policy committee includes helping to direct and inform MREA's policy priorities and strategy from the perspective of someone working in the solar industry and someone who studied renewable energy policy academically. And it's been awesome having McKenna lead the charge this session. She's doing a really great job.
Great. Thank you, Nicola. And thanks for co-presenting on this call today. So as you can see, part of MREA's mission is advocacy. So we're advocating for the advancement of renewable energy in Montana. What does that really mean? For MREA, that means having a presence at the legislature, educating lawmakers, bringing proactive policy proposals in the form of bills that are debated and voted on by lawmakers, weighing in on defensive bills that may have a harmful effect on the distributed energy industry of Montana, local businesses, and the families, students, nonprofits, and interests that would like to see this sector thrive. So we keep our members up to speed on important bills moving through the legislature and provide the tools for MREA members to contact their lawmakers and engage in democracy in the decision-making process that has such a significant impact on renewable energy progress in Montana. So if you are not on our mailing list, it looks a lot like, these are what our action alerts typically look like. Oops, jumped the gun there. Here we go. But we'll give you information on what the bill is, a description of the bill, and then how you can contact your lawmakers. I think this is a really important tool that MREA definitely uses. We have used it the first half of this legislative session. So if you are not on the MREA newsletter yet, I'm providing the link here below so you can join in on that. So for this presentation, we're going to start with a recap of MREA's top priority bills, then go into further detail about some of the other bills on our radar. But let's start with our top priority bills. One that we were supporting is Senate Bill 399, Community Solar Enabling Legislation. And another had to do with revisions to net metering, or the credit that rooftop solar users get for systems that they put on their homes. And the way that this was set up, we opposed this one. So actually, let's start with the positive. If we could jump into Community Solar, Senate Bill 399. I'll give a quick description of this bill, and then Nicola will jump into her impressions of like how this hearing went and where it stands now. So over the years, and if you're a member of MREA or been participating with MREA in the past, you may have seen that MREA has supported some proactive bills to enable community solar in Montana in prior sessions. if you're part of a rural electric co-ops get to set they have a little more freedom in terms of setting their own policies. And a number of those have actually enabled successful community solar programs across the state, many of which have sold out. But the idea of community solar is for folks who can't afford or maybe have structural issues with putting solar on their own roofs or their own property. Maybe they're a renter. Perhaps the $10,000 to $20,000 investment is just a little too steep for them to take. Community solar is an additional option for consumers to take advantage of the ability to generate their own energy and then also offset their electricity bill through a bulk project, basically. So that they would buy subscriptions, or even in some models, there's purchasing of individual panels, and then that credit would be given to that homeowner individual, and then it would offset their energy bill powering on a different site. We've seen great success in Minnesota, Colorado. I believe that some other states on the West Coast have enabled legislation, but generally there's lots of success in the co-op territories. But the way that Montana law stands right now, investor-owned utility territory like MDU and Northwestern Energy, we cannot enable community solar the way that the law is written today. So over the years, we've introduced, and at this time, this effort was led by the members of Northern Plains Resource Council, and we supported this bill to try for enabling community solar and more access for Montanans this session. But Nicola, do you want to jump into some of the details there?
Yeah, sure. So like McKenna said, the effort was headed up by Northern Plains Resource Council, and I thought it had a good hearing. I thought that the sponsor, Chris Pope, did a good job. The supporters at the hearing included affordable housing groups like Habitat for Humanity, conservation organizations like MEIC, and of course MREA. McKenna did a good job here as well. The Farmers Union, and also everyday Montanans and utility customers from places like Great Falls and Helena and Jefferson City and Bozeman. So it was a really good turnout. I came and testified in support of Senate Bill 399 on behalf of Onsite Energy because we really believe in trying to advocate at any opportunity for more inclusive policies for Montanans to access our state's huge solar resource potential. And like McKenna was saying, Montana code currently requires an investor-owned utility territory that you have to own the property, which effectively excludes a really large population of potential solar customers if the roof is too shaded or too small, or if it has a lot of obstructions or architecturally complex, or most commonly, if the initial investment is cost prohibitive. Community solar programs would create a path for all those folks in those various scenarios to participate in the many benefits of solar energy, like reducing their electricity bills, hedging against future utility rate increases, and just having a choice and a say in where they get their energy from, and access to financial and energy independence. This bill unfortunately failed on a 6-6 vote and then was tabled in committee last week. And while it won't be moving any further in this session, MREA is committed to working with allies to pursue more opportunities for Montanans to choose solar, as I was describing, no matter their income level or living situation. We're in the process of evaluating with stakeholders and experts how and if community solar bills are the right mechanism to meet that need, and what that would take to get a community solar enabling bill to pass and turn into a successful program in future legislative sessions. It's come up in past sessions before. I was glad to see it discussed again, because I also feel like every time it's discussed, legislators understand it a little more, and which is one plus of just having the conversation. And so I'm hopeful for this in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola, and really good description of how the hearing went, and agree as far as assessing and determining what might be possible in the future. That's definitely the direction that MREA is going to take with all the other stakeholders who also want to see community solar happen in Montana. Any questions about the community solar bill, just knowing that it was a big priority for MREA in the proactive space? anything that folks want to comment on or ask questions about. Okay. Seeing none, let's move over to our other top priority bill this session. This was a defensive bill for us. House Bill 643 would have made significant revisions to net metering and the net metering process for rooftop solar and distributed generation customers in Northwestern and MDU service territory. But excuse me, I misspoke. Primarily Northwestern service territory, just the way that the law is written. So what House Bill 643 would have done is create an entirely separate rate class for net metered customers, something that's already been deliberated and voted on unanimously 5-0 at the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission, for those who might not be familiar, that's the regulatory body that's set up to balance interests of investor-owned utilities in monopoly territories and their customers who don't have a say on who their energy supplier or service provider is. So the idea there is to balance the dynamic between captive customers and making sure that the company providing that service is thriving and healthy. So you may have recognized, and if you've been a member of MREA and got our communications, we've been actively engaged at the Public Service Commission for a number of years. And on the 2018-2019, there was a big rate case where there was a case brought before the Public Service Commission, and they were debating and deliberating what would be appropriate for rate increases or rate class changes for across Northwestern Energy service territory. So in 2019, that ruling was particular to net meters. It was a unanimous decision that a change at this time was not appropriate, that we were going to leave net metering the way it was. But this bill brought by Representative Josh Kastmeyer from Fort Benton would have put some parameters and sideboards on what the Public Service Commission was allowed to evaluate when it came to net metered customers. And based on our read, it was a cost of service study rather than a value of solar or a cost benefit analysis. So the way that we read the bill, it was putting a number of sideboards on what the PSC was allowed to look at and would have devalued rooftop solar in the long haul, which we think would be detrimental to the industry. So with a number of supporters and folks who also agreed, we had a really excellent hearing, and this bill was tabled in committee on a 6-7 vote. So that was a really big win for us. We're really, really proud of the work that you all put in to make sure that this bill to put sideboards on what the Public Service Commission was allowed to look at did not advance through the legislative session. And as far as where MREA stands on net metering, we want to make sure that the rate that we have in Montana is fair and balances interests, while also not being so far-reaching that it has ripple effects and a detriment to the industry's certainty. We heard from a number of solar installers and users in the state who said, you know, I was looking at doing a project, but if this bill passed through, I would have to pull my project, or I wouldn't be able to hire the 5 to 6 people that I'm planning to hire this year or in the next 2 years, just because of the regulatory uncertainty that a bill like this would have done. So for those reasons, we were happy to be engaged and commit to making sure that lawmakers also saw the issues with this bill and also saw the issues around putting sideboards on the PSC, because that's what we have to balance interests. So we want to make sure that they have every power to do so.
One thing I'd like to add to that description is that, like McKenna was saying, there's net metering bills every session. And over the past 10 years that I've been listening to net metering hearings, I feel like 643 was actually a really good hearing for a few different reasons. A big part of what we focus on at MREA is education. And in the past, I've typically been left really frustrated in a hearing when really outlandish false things are said, and there's never really an opportunity to correct it on the record, which is how a lot of misinformation about solar has become pretty deeply ingrained at the legislature. And while it's not to say that I agree with everything the proponents of HB 643 said, the testimony and the discussion, it never delved into the sort of like dramatized, outlandish realm that it historically has. And thanks to some really thoughtful strategy by McKenna and followed up with some really good questions from some renewable energy allies on the committee that gave extra mic time to experts on the topic. I feel like for once I can say that the right information got on the record. It was not overshadowed by false anti-solar tropes, and that it was ultimately reflected in the vote. And we were really happy to see how that played out, and grateful for everyone who spoke up about it and made their voice heard, just to make sure things stay fair. PSE.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this was a very clear hearing, and lawmakers were definitely able to assess the pros and cons. Any question? Well, community solar and net metering, if those were our top priority bills this session, and both have been tabled. So you can see that a lot of action happened in the first half of the legislative session. Any questions from this group about net metering or the community solar bill, now that you've had a chance to hear about both of them? Okay, seeing none, but if you end up thinking of them, feel free to shoot MREA an email, info@montanarenewables.org, or let us know if you've got future questions. But overall, congratulations to the MREA community. I mean, these were really big policies, and while we're disappointed that we won't see community solar on the other side, the work and effort that you all put in to contact lawmakers, to be up to speed on what's happening at the legislative session, and just make sure that we're putting the best policies forward for the future of distributed energy generation and reliability in Montana. I mean, that's huge. So want to thank you all for being members and also just being involved with MREA. So this is just for fun. We had some really good days at the Capitol, and here's some pictures of some MREA members engaging with lawmakers. Here we've got Jack Isbell and Matt from Solar Montana, as well as Brad Van Wert, our board president and owner of Harvest Solar. Going to the Capitol, doing the good work and making sure that our perspective is shared. Oh, let's see. Okay, looking at the chat, I do see a note from Sam, and we will get to that about Senate Bill 109. Good stuff. All right. So bills still in play, just for you all to be aware of. One that we support is House Bill 245. That's a bill from Representative Knudsen. It expands the trades education training tax credit and also includes solar installers as well as roofers and other trades organizations to jump on a tax credit to invest in training for their employees. So up to $2,000 per year per employee. And I believe there's been a few amendments, but for a maximum, I believe, of like a $25,000 tax credit. So I see this as certainly a good benefit when we're thinking about workforce development for solar and distributed generation in Montana. We want to make sure that we have every opportunity possible for local folks and anyone interested in coming into the state to have strong workforce development opportunities. So I see this as a really good one to support, and we'll make sure to support it on the other side. It's passed through the House and is headed to the Senate. So that's House Bill 245. A couple that we oppose that are still in play: House Bill 524 increases requirements for residential solar installers and distributors. It started out being pretty darn egregious and basically just would have made the lives of these small business owners a lot harder and jumping through a lot of regulatory red tape. It's been amended to be a little less severe. That said, it's still a burden that we're placing on one industry, and overall, we don't see it as a particularly fair policy decision to ask for these extra requirements and then hold potential penalties and fines over installers' heads, but there's no clear path in terms of enforcement for how these disclosures are double checked to make sure that installers are doing what they can to make sure they're in compliance. So there's too many questions and not enough answers. And when you deal with penalties through potential consumer protection violations in Title 30 of the MCA, it goes too far. And so that's one of the reasons that we're going to oppose House Bill 524 when it heads over to the Senate. But the details of that bill, it just requires that country of origin be disclosed on solar panels. And our question is that already happens, at least at the federal level. There's disclosures and requirements that are put on. You can look at the back sticker on any solar panel or packaging, and it gives the country of origin. So our question is like, well, what else can a Montana solar installer do to comply? And do we need these extra regulations? Or will we be back in 2 years trying to repeal this through the red tape initiative that our governor is working on? Another bill that we'll be tracking and opposing on the other side is House Bill 241, prohibiting local governments from adopting EV and solar ready codes in the future. I think that there's just a limitation on local control that would also be of detriment if we're trying to advance renewables and distributed energy in Montana at the local level. So it's putting a lot of sideboards on local control, and that's a theme that we have seen, at least in the energy space of the legislative session. There's a few other bills out there like Senate Bill 208, Senate Bill 228, that put additional sideboards on what local governments can do in terms of making commitments to phase out of fossil fuel or natural gas and go more towards a clean energy infrastructure. Just on the short list here, more anecdotally and things that I don't have listed on our sheet. A few other bills that we saw this session that we can count as wins. There were 2 bad bills that would have increased on the utility scale renewable energy production taxes by 5 times what the rate currently is. Of course, if we're going to overtax or at least increase the tax burden on utility scale renewable energy development in Montana, and if there are other states that don't have that, it's going to be more competitive for developers to pursue interests in other states. So we were able to oppose both of those bills. That was Senate Bill 99 and House Bill 454. I want to make sure I have that correct. Yep, House Bill 454. Those were both different bills doing a very similar thing to tax large-scale renewable production out of existence. And we were able to get both those bills tabled. So congratulations, everybody. We stopped some bad bills. A few others that we are tracking, but MREA doesn't have official positions on, is the PSC redistricting bill that Sam mentioned in the chat there. That's Senate Bill 109. What the bill is intended to do is reset the Public Service Commission districts based on the 2020 US Census, make it more representational. But the way that the map is currently built and the way that this legislation looks right now, it would split up each Public Service Commissioner's jurisdiction in some of the major towns. Like Great Falls, I think, would have 3 different Public Service Commissioners. Bozeman might have, or Billings would have 2, and Missoula would have 2. So that's something that we're going to keep our eyes on, make sure that we are tracking, and we want to make sure that whatever districts are set, it's not going to be confusing to ratepayers and voters. That's right. Yep, just like Ian said, it's splitting up every big city. So that's something that we'll have our eyes on the second half of the session, is Senate Bill 109. A few others, there's a resolution, House Joint Resolution 6. It's an interim study on electric power reserves and system reliability. This is just another topic of interest to MREA, and we will likely be involved if this bill passes and is adopted and focused. It might be a primary focus of the Energy and Telecommunications Interim Committee. Just one more note for everybody's radar. There's a couple of bills related to electric vehicles. And while MREA is more on the distributed energy and renewable energy themes, we do have, we think about electrification and the future of power in Montana. And I think that electric vehicles are playing a pretty big role in that. So we have our eyes on House Bill 60, which increases registration fees on electric vehicles, and House Bill 55. Ian, you might know more about this. Did you get the status report? Did that make it through? Will it be headed over to the Senate?
Yes, it made it through with amendments that basically require everyone that's installing a charger to also install a dedicated meter for that charger, which will just increase the cost of installing new EV chargers. Additionally, it lowers the cost of the registration fee by 30% come 2028 when the tax on legacy chargers kicks in.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So overall, like definitely some moving parts that are still happening with that heavily amended bill, but I think it's fair to say that as written, House Bill 55 is putting more onerous requirements on renewable energy and electric vehicle adoption in tandem. And that could be something that we'll have to be more involved in the second half of session for MREA if it becomes so problematic that we're going to limit electric vehicle adoption and progress in the state of Montana. Okay, any other, let's see, just for bills that folks have questions on, I saw in the chat that Sam wanted the number on that reliability joint resolution, that's HJ6. Other questions about bills moving through or anything you're curious about? Themes, what's going on at the Capitol? All right. I'll go back to our PowerPoint then. So the last question for us is like, all right, we've made it halfway through the legislative session. What can we do now? I'd encourage everyone to contact your lawmakers and thank them. It's been a really, I mean, they have really long days and they work really hard. So whether you agree with every policy decision that they've made or not, I think it's very important to make sure that your lawmakers know that constituents are watching and paying attention to the decisions that they're making. And if you're looking for something to say, I would recommend contacting the Senate Energy Committee and saying about the community solar bill, Senate Bill 399. If they didn't support the bill, maybe encourage them to support it in a future session, talk about how important it is to you. Or if they did support the community solar bill, send them a thank you. Say that that's, you were tracking it and you wanted to thank them for their time and thank them for their vote in support of more renewable energy access in Montana. And so if you want more details on where you can find information on lawmakers, there's this handy link that is through Legislative Services. It's called Have Your Say Montana. And I'm putting that link in the chat there. But Have Your Say Montana is the portal that provides the contact information for your lawmakers. You can also plug in your house or your home address wherever you're registered to vote, and you can see who your lawmakers are. You typically have one representative and one senator for your two districts, your House and Senate districts. Send them an email, give them a note. It doesn't have to necessarily be specific. Instead, you can say who you are, that you're a voter in their district, and talk about some of the interests that you care about and you support. I think that one of the beautiful things about Montana is how accessible our lawmakers are. There's just not that many people in Montana and they don't have staff. So you have a direct line of access in a number of ways to talk with your lawmakers. And we want to make sure that the accountability is there and lawmakers know that we're paying attention. Yeah, go ahead, Nicola.
Another way that you can get involved is so through the policy committee is another way that members of MREA can be involved on the ground level. And we're creating and executing strategies, writing letters, helping MRA move the needle and advance Montana's renewable energy industry. And so this includes time in and out of the legislature. During the session, we meet frequently. When legislators not in session, we meet a little less frequently, but it's still really an engaged, really good experience. The policy committee tackles renewable energy and distributed energy resources issues deliberated at the PSC and the legislative interim, and we're actively recruiting more MRA members to be part of the policy committee. So if there's some MRA member policy nerds out there that are interested in sort of being part of this, it's a small but mighty committee, and we'd love just to expand our brain trust and get more insights and opinions. And so if that's something that you might be interested in, or someone you know, if you know a policy nerd, you can send us a note at info@montanarenewables.org.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the plug, Nicola. And I almost forgot that the work that MREA does in the policy space is also addressed and deliberated by our policy committee. And Nicola is on that policy committee. She has been for a number of years. I don't know how many years. Nicola, how many has it been?
I'm not sure. Maybe 4 or 5. I can't 3. I don't know.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. So if you want to be even deeper in the policy space of renewable energy in Montana, the policy committee might be the right spot for you. So to wrap up this call, we just have a couple more announcements. One is that MREA is going to be on the road here this summer. We're interested in just meeting members where they're at, get a better understanding of what our members and supporters care about, and also talk about some of the programs that we have coming up for MREA and what our organizational focus looks like after the session is over. So you can see on the list there, we're headed to Great Falls, Kalispell, Livingston, Butte, Helena, Billings, Bozeman, and Missoula. Those dates are not officially set yet, but when they are, I'll be sure to get those announcements out to the MREA listserv and our newsletter lists. But if you are someone who lives in any of these areas and you'd be interested in helping us get the word out or partner, especially we think that it'd be fun to have venues that have solar on their roof or have done some cool energy efficiency project, then be able to showcase some of those success stories, give us a shout. Just like Nicola said, info@montanarenewables.org. We would love to have your help or support in getting the word out about our road show. And then one more fun announcement, the Montana Clean Energy Fair 2023. So MREA hosts the Clean Energy Fair every summer. This is our 12th year doing it, and we're headed to Billings. So starting at 9 o'clock on Saturday, August 12th, we'll be in Billings doing a ton of awesome workshops at Montana State University Billings campus. And wanted to make sure you all knew about the date. So mark your calendars. It's free. It's open to the public. We'll have vendors and really interesting workshops and also some fun kids activities. So it's something that everybody can get behind and support. There's also an electric vehicle car show. And I think of it like the home improvement show, renewable energy edition. So it's a really good time, and I want to make sure that you all are invited to Billings. Come see us on August 12th. Well, that concludes this presentation and this legislative briefing. Thanks everyone for being part of it. And thanks for being involved with Montana Renewable Energy Association. Feel free to send us any questions. I put my email there at the ending slide. And like I said, we're challenging everyone. If everyone on this call were a member or donated $50 to Montana Renewable Energy Association, that means we can continue to do our good programmatic work and research and all of the things that go into making our organization and advancing renewable energy in Montana possible. So I would challenge you all to do that. I'm going to put the link one more time. Actually, I'll put both links. So here's the how to join MREA or support MREA. And then if you want to keep abreast of future events, you want to stay in the loop about those road shows that are coming up this summer, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Thank you, everybody.